He kneeled and gave me a key, not a ring, to show I held the secret to his silent world. I thought it was our happy ending. I never knew the door that key would unlock would put a target on my back, and that his father would have to choose between his empire and my life. This is more than a romance. It's a dangerous bargain. If you need to know if love can survive a mafia war,
subscribe right now.
This story is just getting started. Tell me where you're watching from and what you think Don Marco should do in the comments. The most feared man in the city throws a lavish party for his only son. No one looks the son in the eye. No one speaks to him. They are all too afraid of his father. They treat the young man like a ghost. Then a woman in a simple black dress sees him. And she sees the intelligent, lonely man everyone else ignores. The grand hotel ballroom shimmered with false smiles. Powerful people laughed too loud, glancing at the man in the corner. Don Marco Rossi, the Mafia boss. Tonight was for his son Leo. Leo stood near the champagne, a gentle smile on his face. A senator walked by, patted Leo's shoulder without meeting his gaze, and moved on. Leo's smile didn't fade, but his eyes grew distant. He was used to this. Across the room, a woman watched. Her name was Clara. She wore a plain black dress. She saw the hollow pats on the back. She saw the fear in the guest's eyes. She saw Leo's hands, moving slightly at his sides. They were forming silent words. He was signing to himself. Clara felt a sharp pang in her chest. She recognized that loneliness. She walked through the crowd, ignoring the glares. She stopped in front of Leo. He braced for another empty greeting. Clara raised her own hands. Her fingers moved with clear, deliberate grace. "Your hands speak beautifully," she signed. Leo froze. The noise of the party vanished. For the first time all night, someone truly saw him. Leo's eyes widened. He slowly raised his hands. "You understand?" he signed back. Clara nodded, a small, real smile touching her lips. "My brother," she signed.
He was deaf.
"You sign like him." Clear and patient. From his corner, Don Marco watched, his sharp eyes narrowing. He saw his son's entire posture change. Leo's shoulders straightened. His face lit up with a joy the Don hadn't seen in years. A dangerous hope sparked in the old man's heart. He gestured to his bodyguard, Tony. "Find out who she is," he murmured. Tony melted into the crowd as Clara and Leo continued their silent conversation. Leo signed about the paintings on the wall, how he loved their colors. Clara asked about his favorite. He pointed to a small, quiet landscape. Not the biggest or boldest. The one that looked peaceful. Tony returned to Don Marco. Clara Miller. A librarian. Clean record. Parents deceased. Brother passed away 2 years ago. The Don nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the pair. He saw Clara laugh soundlessly at something Leo signed. The sound of her silent joy was more real than all the noise in the room. He felt a strange tightening in his throat. His son, his simple son, was having the first real conversation of his life. And it was with a woman brave enough to walk into the lion's den. As the party ended, Leo, with a nervous glance at his father, signed to Clara. "Could you come back? Tomorrow? In the garden?" Clara looked past him, meeting Don Marco's intense stare. The danger was palpable, but she looked back at Leo's hopeful face. She nodded. The next day, the mansion's garden was quiet. Leo and Clara sat on a stone bench. He signed rapidly, his hands flying. Stories, thoughts, jokes trapped inside him for a lifetime poured out. Clara listened with her whole being, her eyes never leaving his. She learned he wasn't slow. He was a man trapped in a silent world, treated like furniture by everyone too scared to try and understand. He was observant, kind, and deeply smart. Inside the house, Don Marco watched from the window, a single tear tracing his weathered cheek. Tony stood beside him. "It could be a trick, boss. An act." The Don shook his head. No one can fake that light in his eyes. Clara returned every day. Their world was the garden, the library, their shared silence. Don Marco ordered his men to give them space, but to watch Clara's home. He had to be sure. Leo showed Clara his secret project, a detailed model city he'd been building for years in the solarium. It was brilliant in its design. He signed, a city where everyone can understand each other. Clara realized his mind was not just intelligent, it was visionary. The fear others mistook for dullness was simply him being overwhelmed by noise he couldn't process. In the quiet, he thrived. Meanwhile, Tony's reports came back. Clara was who she said she was. Her grief for her brother was real. Her life was ordinary. Don Marco began to trust. It was his first mistake. A rival family, the Grecos, heard rumors. They heard Don Marco's vulnerable son had a new friend. A weakness.
They saw a way to strike.
They sent a man to the library where Clara worked. He slipped a note into her bag. It read, "Stay away from the Rossi boy, or your quiet life will get very loud." Clara's blood ran cold. She showed the note to Leo that afternoon in the garden. His face filled with a protective fury she'd never seen. He wasn't scared. He was angry. For the first time, he grabbed her hand. It wasn't a sign. It was a promise. He led her straight to his father. In Don Marco's oak-paneled study, Leo signed the whole story, his movements sharp and fierce. Don Marco's expression turned to ice. He looked at Clara. "You came here, even with this threat." Clara met his gaze. "He's the best person I've ever known," she signed, and Leo voiced the words softly for his father. The Don saw the love between them. It wasn't loud. It was built in silence and understanding. It was real. The protective wall around his heart crumbled. He spoke to Tony, his voice deadly calm. "The Grecos think my son's heart is a weakness. They are wrong. It is my greatest strength, and they just declared war on it." The game had changed. Clara was no longer just a visitor. She was under the protection of the family. And Leo was no longer a passive spectator. He had someone to fight for. The threat changed everything. Don Marco's mansion, once a symbol of intimidating power, became a fortress. Clara moved into a guest room at the family's insistence. The quiet garden talks now had a bodyguard, Tony, watching from the terrace. Leo hated it. He signed to Clara, "This cage again. But now you're in it with me." Clara took his hand. She signed, "We're not in a cage. We're on an island. And we have to be smart." She had an idea. She asked Leo about everyone who came and went. He noticed everything. The postman's new routine. A cleaner's nervous glance. He began keeping a silent log in a notebook, sketching patterns only he could see. The Greco family made their move. A delivery truck, supposedly with groceries, arrived at the mansion service gate. Leo watched from his solarium window. He saw the driver's hands. He wasn't focused on the boxes. He was scanning the grounds, his fingers tapping a rapid, anxious rhythm on the steering wheel. Leo grabbed his notebook and found Clara. He showed her the sketch he'd just made, the man's face, the specific rhythm of his fingers. Clara understood. It was a reconnaissance mission. She brought Leo and the notebook to Don Marco. Using Leo's sharp observations, Tony cross-checked the driver. He was a known Greco associate. Leo had just uncovered their first spy. Don Marco looked at his son, then at the detailed drawing. A fierce pride burned in his eyes. "You see what we do not," he said, his voice rough. Leo simply signed. "I have time to look." Trust inside the Rossi organization frayed. Paranoia set in. Don Marco called a meeting with his 3 most trusted captains in the study. Clara and Leo were in the next room, the door slightly ajar. Leo watched the meeting through the crack. He saw the words, the angry gestures. But he saw something else. One captain, a man named Santoro, kept his hands perfectly still in his lap, while the others argued. His face was calm, but his right thumb was pressing so hard into his palm his knuckle was white. Leo later signed to Clara and his father. He was holding a volcano inside. The others showed fire. He hid it. That's more dangerous. Don Marco was stunned. He had trusted Santoro for 15 years. But he trusted his son more. He ordered a silent investigation on Santoro alone. The investigation revealed the truth. Santoro was deep in debt to Greco gambling operations. He was the leak. He was the one who told the Grecos about Clara, about Leo's growing happiness, the perceived weakness. Don Marco faced Santoro in the empty garage. He didn't yell. He sounded tired. "You betrayed my family. You targeted my son." Santoro, cornered, spat. "Your son is a simpleton. A liability." From the shadows, Leo stepped forward, Clara beside him. He looked Santoro directly in the eye, his gaze clear and intelligent.
He didn't sign.
He didn't need to. His presence, strong and sure, was his statement. Santoro's sneer faltered. He saw no weakness, only a cold, assessing stare that mirrored his father's. Don Marco nodded to Tony. Santoro was led away. The immediate threat was gone, but the war was not over. With the traitor removed, a fragile peace settled. One evening, under the solarium lights, Leo led Clara to his model city. He made 2 final adjustments, a tiny library and next to it, a grand solarium. He pointed to them, then to her, then to himself. Clara's eyes filled with tears. He was building their future. He slowly got down on one knee. From his pocket, he pulled not a ring, but a simple, old key. He signed, "The key to my silence. You are the only one who has it. Will you stay?" Clara, smiling through tears, nodded fiercely and signed back, "Always." They embraced in the quiet glow. Don Marco watched from the doorway, a true smile on his face for the first time in decades. He turned to leave them in their perfect silence. Then Tony rushed in, his face pale. He handed Don Marco a cell phone. The Don listened, and the color drained from his face. He looked back at the happy couple in the solarium, his expression now one of sheer terror. He whispered to Tony, "Get them to the safe room."
Now.
On the phone, a distorted voice had just said, Santoro talked. "We know about the woman. We know she's the key to his heart. The Grecos don't want a war, Marco. They want a trade. The woman for your son's life. You have until dawn." The screen fades to black on Don Marco's agonized face, the sounds of Leo's happy silence in the background now the most precious and endangered thing in his world.